Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Memory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you a football game plan special presentation. We're taking a look at the Arizona Cardinals, and we're compiling a starting lineup of some of their all-time greatest players. Now, many have donned the uniform of the Cardinals, but only a few can truly be called an all-time great. So let's start this video off by naming the starting quarterback on this all-time team.
Jim Hart was an outstanding quarterback for the St. Louis Cardinals, played 17 seasons in St. Louis, and is the franchise leader in passing yards over 34,000 and touchdown passes over 200. It was in 1973 when Don Coryell came and implemented the Air Coryell offense that his career took off, led the Cardinals to 3 straight playoff appearances in the mid-70s, and yes, the greatest show on turf originated in St. Louis, but it wasn't the Rams, it was Hart's St. Louis Cardinals.
Ollie Matson is by far one of my favorite football players of all time, and when you look at a guy that was essentially the first multifaceted running back, he could line up as a wide receiver, had sprinter speed, you could put him as a kickoff returner and a punt returner. If I had to compare a guy style to Ollie Matson's style, to me today would be Matt Forte, but this guy was faster than Forte and much more explosive. It's funny how people only remember Otis Anderson with the New York Giants in that Super Bowl run, but this guy was an all-pro player, Pro Bowl player as well for the St. Louis Cardinals during the mid-70s, one of the best running backs in NFL history.
The 1979 NFL Rookie of the Year, was a 2-time Pro Bowler and an All-Pro, finished his Cardinals career falling 1 yard short of 8,000 and racked up over 45 touchdowns.
How often do you hear defensive coordinators say we got a game plan for a fullback? And that's what Larry Centers brought to the table. That's the type of impact he had on the game. You talk about a guy that was an outstanding lead blocker, also a solid runner. He could have been a running back on many teams and was one of the best receiving fullbacks of all time. So definitely he earns a spot on this list.
What made Roy Green so special was the fact that he was a cornerback as a rookie, year 2 moved to wide receiver and led a full-fledged assault on the Cardinals record books. Green retired as the all-time leading receiver in Cardinals team history, amassing almost 8,500 yards and 66 touchdowns. Big play threat waiting to happen, and you look at his years in 1983 and 1984, combined 25 touchdowns and almost 3,000 yards receiving.
When you take a look at the Cardinals team history, and that's dating back to Chicago, to St. Louis, to now in Arizona, to have a guy in Larry Fitzgerald that just came into the league in 2004 to be on this list, that says a lot about that young man's character and his impact on the football team.
I do believe Anquan Boldin deserves to be a starter on this list. You look at what he was able to accomplish in his 7-year career in Arizona, NFL Rookie of the Year, over 7,500 yards receiving, 44 touchdowns, and also made 3 Pro Bowls. A lot of people don't give him the credit he deserves. I think he's one of the more underrated superstars in the last decade. Jackie Smith was a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. This guy was one of the first big play threats at the tight end position, also had wide receiver speed, and was a very underrated punter. In the first parts of his career, the first 3 years, he was a punter, averaged over 39 yards a punt. So he was versatile, and this guy, again, made it a terror to match up versus those St. Louis Cardinals.
I don't think Dan Dierdorf gets a lot of credit for the impact he's had on that tackle position. You talk about a guy at one point in time was the standard and by which offensive linemen and offensive tackles were judged. He's one of the greatest linemen in NFL history and also college football history.
Tom Banks was a 4-time Pro Bowler from 75 to 78 and was an integral part to those explosive Cardinals teams of the mid to late 70s. Arguably one of the best centers of the 1960s, Bob DeMarco was a 4-time Pro Bowler and 2-time first-team All-Pro. Very good ball player. If you like Damani Dawson, if you like Ken Hall, you'll like Bob DeMarco. You can actually make a case that Ernie McMillan deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. This guy was a fixture on the right side of that Cardinals offensive line from 1961 to 1974 and also was a 4-time Pro Bowler. Off the field issues aside, on the field, Louis Sharp was an outstanding football player at the left tackle position. This guy, a fixture, started every possible game in his Cardinals career, which was 189. The Cardinals took a huge risk with the number 6 overall selection in the 1991 draft by selecting Eric Swann, a guy that didn't play college football. He played semi-pro. That's a huge gamble to take, and it paid off tremendously. This guy finished his career with over 46.5 sacks. David Galloway was a defensive tackle that had defensive end-like pass rushing skills, and that's what made him special. From 82 to 89, wreaked havoc on the interior of opposing offensive lines. Leo Sugar was an all-time great for the Chicago Cardinals and later the St. Louis Cardinals, played from 1954 to 1960, two-time Pro Bowler and first-team All-Pro. Chuck Walker was a versatile defensive lineman that flip-flopped from defensive tackle to defensive end. Didn't matter where he lined up, he was a constant nuisance for opposing quarterbacks. Who says you can't get better after the age of 30? Dale Meinert at the linebacker position made 3 Pro Bowls and became an All-Pro after 30. In the first parts of his career, for 3 years, was an outstanding guard. So this guy, again, played on both sides of the line of scrimmage and a very versatile athlete. Bill Coleman added an element to the Cardinals defense that they didn't have before he arrived. He was an outstanding coverage linebacker, was able to line up and match up versus opposing tight ends. E.J. Jr. was a triple threat at linebacker. He can stop the run at 6'3", 235 pounds. He was a terror rushing the passer and was also athletic enough to get out there and cover running backs as well as tight ends. So this guy definitely deserves a spot on this list.
Everyone talks about Deion Sanders, everyone talks about Lester Hayes, but what you don't talk about is how great Aeneas Williams is and was as an Arizona Cardinal. You talk about a guy that would essentially take away your team's #1 wide receiver, also had the ability to catch interceptions and quietly, very quietly, made that transition that a lot of people think cornerbacks can make. He made it from corner to free safety flawlessly, and you didn't know. This guy is an outstanding football player. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Not only did Larry Wilson have supreme ball skills as evident by his 52 career interceptions, which is the Cardinals franchise record, but also was an innovator. He coined the phrase safety blitz. This guy, coming off the edge, had a knack for getting to the quarterback and also had a knack for disrupting plays in the backfield. Some may say Roger Wehrli was the first shutdown corner in the National Football League. Quarterbacks refused to throw his way because he had tremendous speed and outstanding ball skills. Finished his career with 40 interceptions, was a 7-time Pro Bowler and 3-time first-team All-Pro. Roger Wehrli picked his way to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Dick Night Train Lane is one of the greats of all time. Only played 6 seasons for the Chicago Cardinals, but still was able to pick up 30 interceptions. And what made it even more impressive was the fact that he was a complete corner. Not only can he pick off passes, but he would knock the snot out of opposing running backs and wide receivers. I had to find a way to put Terry Metcalf on his roster. You look at what he was able to bring to the table. His return skills were legendary. Plus, he was the first Reggie Bush before Reggie Bush. A lot of people say Gale Sayers, but I think Reggie Bush compared more to Terry Metcalf than anybody. This guy can score from anywhere on the field, was able to get the top speed and change direction without losing speed. That made him an instant threat and a fixture on this all-time team. Charlie Tripper was a collegiate Hall of Famer and an NFL Hall of Famer, and I had to put him on this list as a returner because he played 3 different positions. He was an outstanding returner, running back, and also quarterback on some very good Cardinal ball clubs. Jim Bacon was an all-time great, played his entire 17-year career in St. Louis, finished as the all-time scorer in Cardinals history. Rich Camarillo was an outstanding punter for the Cardinals, was a 4-time Pro Bowler and first-team All-Pro, finished his career with over 43 yards a punt. Now here's a look at the second-team offense of our all-time Arizona Cardinals team. You look at some outstanding football players on this list. You look at that backfield: John David Crow, Ernie Nevers, Stump Mitchell, even the outstanding wide receiver and Mel Grant, Pat Tilley. A lot of great players on this list. And here's the second team defense. Again, in the secondary, I'm a big fan of Tim McDonald, played from 87 to 92, and he was an integral part to a lot of those solid Cardinal defenses. And also Ronald McKinnon, played from 96 to 04, consistent playmaker for the Cardinals. I like the way he played the game. Big fan of what he was able to do down there in the desert. And also want to give a huge shout out to Cardinal fan forums for always showing football game plan support.